Проблемы внедрения искусственного интеллекта, нейротехнологий, квантовых вычислений, освоения космического пространства, систем мобильной связи, репродуктивных и биотехнологий, генетики и синтетической биологии.
Генные, клеточные технологии, разработка лекарственных препаратов, разработка диагностику, разработка медицинских изделий различных. Все это нашло отражение в этом руководстве. И не только этические, но и правовые вопросы. Я уверен в том, что это издание будет полезно всем тем, кто занимается в наше время научными исследованиями и, в частности, в области генетики и генно-клеточных технологий. Очень рекомендую это издание.
Человеческий фактор при всем многообразии технологических возможностей является решающим в создании и применении результатов научных разработок. Эффективность и безопасность новых технологий зависит не только от квалификации и профессиональных знаний, но и от научной добросовестности исследователя.
Одна из частей коллективной работы руководства по этике научных исследований была посвящена проблеме добросовестности в науке. Особый интерес к ней не случайен, поскольку за каждым достижением стоит человек со своими ценностями, стремлениями, представлениями о допустимом поведении. Добросовестность проявляется, в частности, при сборе и анализе данных, корректном указании авторства, прозрачности методологии, готовности конструктивной критики и в отказе от плагиата. История наглядно продемонстрировала, что пренебрежение этическими нормами в науке может иметь очень серьезные негативные последствия. Особое значение добросовестность приобретает в эпоху цифровых технологий, больших данных и искусственного интеллекта, так как цена ошибки становится особенно высока.
Развитие дискуссий по вопросам исследовательской этики невозможно без подготовки квалифицированных специалистов, обладающих этическими компетенциями ученого. В медицинском образовании эта задача решается в преподавании дисциплины, давно ставшей неотъемлемой частью учебного процесса – биоэтики.
В 21 веке человечество научилось многому – редактировать гены, клонировать органы. Но главным остается один вопрос – как не навредить? Если биоэтику мы назовем компасом, то эта книга будет являться его стрелкой, указывающей верный путь.
Эта книга именно о том, как стоит мыслить в спорных ситуациях, когда медицина не может дать ответ на вопрос, что есть благо для пациента, что есть благо для врача и что именно должно для всех нас.
Совместные усилия экспертного сообщества и международных организаций, ЮНЕСКО, Всемирной организации здравоохранения, государственных и межгосударственных комитетов по этике являются основой международного сотрудничества и глобальных соглашений в области реализации единых подходов в решении этических проблем науки и общества.
Глубоко уважаемые коллеги, разрешите от всего сердца поздравить вас с замечательным трудом, который является не просто научным произведением, а целым таким практическим руководством по этике научных исследований. Не мне вам рассказывать, насколько чрезвычайно важна эта тема, не просто в международном, а в глобальном масштабе. Замечательный творческий коллектив, не просто экспертов, а болеющих, переживающих действительно за будущее человечества. И те многие проблемы, которые вы ставите в своих статьях, они носят действительно глобальный характер, что для нас, специалистов в области глобальных исследований, в области глобальных процессов чрезвычайно важно. Ведь сейчас на повестке дня одна основная глобальная проблема. Проблема выживания человечества на нашей планете. А это во многом зависит и от вопросов этики, биоэтики, от тех проблем, которые вы поставили в своем руководстве.
Поддержка институтов этического регулирования в науке невозможна без обоснования и закрепления унифицированных принципов исследовательской этики. Данное издание станет незаменимым помощником практикующим специалистам и раскроет широкий спектр тем, которые появляются в ходе этической дискуссии. Руководство будет способствовать решению задач научного поиска, формированию исследовательской культуры и навыков, необходимых для достижения целей доказательной медицины. Издание станет полезным инструментом для специалистов, преподавателей, студентов и всех, кто интересуется вопросами нравственного измерения научного прогресса.
Уважаемые коллеги, благодарю вас за наш совместный труд, за неоценимый вклад в создание руководства по этике научных исследований. Я уверен, что это издание послужит надежной основой для проведения научных исследований, обеспечивающих технологический суверенитет нашей Родины.
Спасибо, Денис.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this video. Remarkable work. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. And now I represent our next speaker. He is next to me, Zudin Alexander Borisovich. I'm not going to read all the titles. He is the director of the National Research Institute of Public Health, named after Semashko. Ethical issues in research involving human participants. Good day, dear colleagues. I hope you hear me. Good day, dear colleagues. And please ask you, help me with the slides, please. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next slide. Practically, I put everything on the slide and just comment them in order to speed up the process. So research ethics in the recent years became the topic for discussion among the scholars, and we see a lot of examples of the development and adoption of different communities of ethic codes. It means these are the principles of activities and behavior of the research in different fields. The most developed ethical norms are in clinical studies, in Helsinki Declaration, then UNESCO ethics, then good clinical practices where ethical norms are formulated, how they should be done with the participation of a human being. But in the studies with the participation of human being, it is done in other spheres, in pedagogic psychology, psychology, and because they have experimental character, they can bring risks and some burden for the participants. They can be very high, not less than in the clinical studies of the new drugs. And on the next slide, so historically it's rather far away from us, but there are historical precedents that show how there can be the damage that can be done, that were done in well-known scientific centers and then were recognized as non-ethical, and they harmed the voluntary participants of these studies, and they violate the rights of these participants. Of course, we understand the importance of ethical principles, so different professional communities, they develop ethical codes where they form the principles and rules, and there are some of them, the examples. And the most actively, we now discuss the principles of the work of the studies who use the interviews, surveys, and respondent surveys. This method should be based on the honesty, on the social and professional responsibility of the surveyor, and they have to receive the informed voluntary consent from the minors. In Canada, for instance, that should be the permission from the Ethics Commission and to get the consent from the parents. On the next slide, you see that the main ethical principles of psychological studies, they are also formulated. I'm not going to read them. They are formulated in ethic codes, for instance, the ethic codes of the British Society of Psychology, is also in the Russian Psychological Society, and we pay attention to the ethics of receiving the voluntary informed consent. We already have experience in medical studies, and it shows that we need a system. We need to systemize the system that include the expert bodies that could conduct a review in the field of psychology, sociology, and these are ethical committees that I mentioned. And the practice of non-clinical studies with the participation of the human participants shows that these studies do not correspond fully for ethical norms. So now about these studies or researches. Yeah. The objective of our pilot work was analyze how the ethical aspects are reflected in the thesis on three specialties: sociology, organizational pharmacy activity, and also we used the data on psychology. Methodology was based on the work of our colleagues from psychology. We used as a prototype their publications, which were developed to the analysis of ethics and the thesis, and we adapted this approach for our specialties, and you can see the reference to this publication. We focused on the theses that were defended on the territory of the Russian Federation 2025, and we analyzed 156 works. We didn't assess the thesis in general, we just fixed the mention of the basic ethical elements, which were the principle of voluntary participation, the receipt of the informed consent, confidentiality of data, and approval from the treatment committee. Thus, we have the quantitative database to compare this in different fields. And the results, they are present on the next slide. 91% of the thesis from our selection has the empirical data. It means that the majority of the researchers work with people, with the human participants. They perform the questionnaires, surveys, interview. It means that the research ethics is very important. Now we'll mention the frequency of mentioning. The most often the authors of thesis, they declare confidentiality. They declare, I want to underline. Then I explain why. Not so often they mention the voluntary participation and informed consent, 20%. Thus, the basic principles are mentioned not always, not to the full extent. The most important and the most representative point, this is the approval of the ethical committee. From 156, only 5 theses have this mark of the approval of ethical committee. We make the conclusion ethical elements are described fragmentarily and mainly declaratively. It means the researchers, they say about them, but they are not supported or confirmed by the procedures. It means that in practice, it is not about a well-established system. Here, we may say in which areas we mention the informed consent, confidentiality of data, and high percentage in the field of organizational pharmacology, pharmacy. And here we see that in the questionnaires and thesis, we declare the anonymity, but in the question, there are the phones of the respondent, the name of the respondent, and some other data that allow us to identify the respondent. It means this is the violation of the ethical principles and approaches. Next slide. And the typical violations and errors, this is the absence of the precise goals of the study. Without having the precise goal, you cannot say whether it is justified to interfere the life of a person. Any interference should have the scientific basis. Then violation of confidentiality. The authors speak about the anonymity of data, but they attach the questionnaires where we see the indirect information, the position where they work, then the age, and so on. And the next is a participation of the vulnerable groups without the approval of the ethics committees. We're talking about children, disabled people, and the other categories that require protection. So the conducting of such type of surveys is a rude violation of the ethical norms and sometimes even legislation. Together, these factors show that formal declaration of the ethical norms in their work do not correspond to the real practice. The data obtained, they underline the necessity to develop the research ethical culture with the participation of human participants. In non-clinical studies, we see that the norms from the clinical studies are transferred there. I say that we have not to declare, but to introduce the real protocols. Also, we see a necessity that scientific community needs to define the unified platform to develop and implement the ethical studies. Our institute for many years works in this field. And I think that we work together with the Yaroslav Medical University, and together we created the School of Ethics that works. There are more than 1,000 graduates from different countries, from CIS, from Russia. And then another school, Start to Science, and this is school for the scientists, for the tutors, and for young scholars. We also take part in the work of preparation, the ethical code of the Russian researcher, which is formed under the auspice of the Presidium of the Russian Academy of Science, and I hope it will be adopted this year and also will be received by our community. Ethic Code of the AI in medicine and healthcare, we took part in its development. We work in the Council of the Ethic and Research, and the meeting was held there in this hall. And we also worked in the working group on the draft of project on genetic technologies and the new areas that we work together with the Yaroslav Medical Universities. This is ethics and non-medical studies, ethics in integrative medicine, and also participation on the integrity publication and fair publication. And the next slide, that what we do, there's a couple of words about Semashko Institute. These are the projects where we are involved. The most interesting one we put in as a project officers, and key for us this year, this resource management of the longevity of the life, integrative medicine, and the system of space science. And we work together with the representatives of different regions of Russian Federation. And I also want to mention that we have done for 3 years, we already work in this field under the auspice of the Russian Academy of Sciences. We collect from the entire country, now it's international project, the most interesting practice of strengthening health. This is the all Russia content. We have more than 100 applications, 125 were the winners, and then we publish an atlas or a kind of, collection of these good practices. I'll leave it here. 125 good practices. I want to invite you to take part in this contest. These what can be, deployed in any region, in any place of our country, and that's really bring benefit to our people. And these are the contacts. This is QR code of our institute. Non-medical studies for all of us is a kind of Achilles heel, and the near future we're going to study this, and I think we'll implement it. These projects and non-medical studies are very important for our people. Thank you very much.
Большое спасибо, Александр Борисович.
Thank you. And we are waiting for our next speaker. This is our Indian guest, Vidushi Chaturvedi. He is the researcher in the field of tech policy and the professor of the Indian School of Business, visiting professor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I feel deeply honored to be here amongst an august gathering of medical professionals, experts, scientists, because I'm not a scientist, I'm not a medical doctor. And I come from the discipline of international politics, human sciences, literature, sociology, philosophy, so on and so forth. And I would begin by saying that artificial intelligence is, of course, the most significant conversation of our times, but it is also rattling. It is upending the world, the kind of things that we have known all through the ages. It's setting in motion a new kind of trend, a new kind of societal value that we have not been aware of, and we have to quickly get accommodated and acclimatized to it. So without much this thing, I know we have had very intense sessions in the morning, and a lot of things that I would also have liked to say have already been covered. So I have no intentions of, boring you. So I'll be very brief, and I would like to touch upon certain aspects of artificial intelligence which keep me awake the whole night. And I'm not joking. This is absolutely true. So I come from a policy making background. I have been in the government for donkey's years. And believe me, AI is a real challenge for regulators. AI is a big challenge for anybody who wants to make policies, who wants to make laws, who wants to do anything with regulatory frameworks. And of course, there are so many principles available. There are so many institutions that are making the principles and guidelines and guardrails. But without the law, they are no good. Because can we depend on human beings to self-regulate them? Especially when AI is not actually very science. It is also a kind of a profit-making venture. Because if you look at the innovation is happening in one geography, and the deployment and use cases are in different geographies. And what does that show? It's not just science for science's sake or science for humanity's sake. The game is something different. So AI is also a power game. AI is also an exclusionary method. So though we keep talking about equity and equality and inclusivity, but actually the world is moving towards more inequality and more of a schism of power with AI. So AI introduction is absolutely, it's topsy-turvying my world and your world as well. How do I move to the next slide? So I'll quickly take you through the slides, and the slides can be seen at leisure. What is more important is to think and discuss about the issues that are concerning us. And thank you. We can go on and on discussing artificial intelligence. And let me tell you, even if you have 4 days of continuous discussions and conferences like these, you will not be able to discuss the aspects that AI is, touching upon. And absolutely, the way it is destroying our world. And sorry to sound a little negative, but AI is very promising, and so much so that it's said to be, some of the scientists, Geoffrey Hinton, one of them says that it could be the last invention by man. So this is not like any of the other scientific interventions and innovations, which have happened in the past. This is something which we have never had before. Okay, so in India, we are trying to leverage technology, and we are very good with digitization, and we are trying to address those challenges which have been very difficult without technology to address, because we are the largest democracy in the world with 1.4 billion people, and reaching out to people is a huge challenge. We have geographical diversities, we have diversities of language, culture, behavior, you name a diversity, and it's there in India. So in order to cater to needs of so many people, to represent them is a huge challenge. And technology has actually done a wonderful task in bringing people together. And I have worked for the unique identification experiment of India, which is a success story in my country. And we have covered 1.4 billion people by giving them unique identities. And you all must be aware that the strategic development goals, sustainable development goals, talk about ID for each human being on the planet. And India has been able to achieve that with a unique ID based on your unique aspects that God has given us, which is our fingerprints and iris and our face. So based on technology, we have been able to give unique ID to all our people. So that's one way we are trying to leverage the emerging technologies, and that is being used to distribute welfare services and schemes and products to everybody, so that there is no leakage of fund, there is good governance, and only the deserving guys get it. So there are no middlemen also. So in my language, in my words, AI would be like the automation of activities that we associate with human thinking, such as decision making and problem solving and learning. So while problem solving and learning is assistive, AI is trying to help me. But if it is trying to take away my decision making power, then I have a bit of a problem. But this happens in such a subtle way that, I'm unconscious most of the time. The relationships that I'm making, the kind of friends my child is making, the restaurants that she's visiting, the dating apps that she's using and people she's dating are all being decided by technology, are all being decided by technology industry or somebody else other than the person who is impacted by these decisions. And that is my problem. So AI is, of course, the most significant conversation, but it's too rapidly evolving for any policymaker, for any regulator. So we can best do a catch-up job. We are just trying to trot behind while it is, rapidly moving ahead. It is galloping, and we are not able to catch up or, walk. We are trotting behind. We know, we have all covered how it was evolved, and in 1950s, John McCarthy gave the name, and then there was a winter of investments, and then how it picked up, and now it's all over. And yet there are just 5 big tech industries that are dominating the innovation in AI. And one of them, which is called NVIDIA, the total valuation of NVIDIA is around $5 trillion, which is the 3rd largest country in the world if it were a country. So it's unimaginable the kind of power that is wielded by the tech companies. And what would they do with that power? We all are seeing what is happening. So the potential of AI, especially in the healthcare sector, is sky high. And we know this Nobel laureate, the head of DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, he got the Nobel for AlphaFold, and the protein folding process that was, unraveled by the scientific innovation. It compressed scientific innovation of decades and decades, 55 decades, they say, 50 years. I'm not a science person. It's too much for me to understand. How was AI able to unravel 5 decades of research and 5 decades of, excruciating studies? It was able to do what human beings are not able to do. That means it is improving upon us. I don't know, I'm not so sure. And then Demis says that in the years to come, AI will cure and end all diseases. So I don't know how many of us believe him, but he's a scientist. He's not a person from the business world. He's not selling a product. So you have to give that some thought. talking about AI, it's very important to take the life cycle approach. And for me, the life cycle of AI begins with the conceptualization. When the concept comes in the mind of the scientist. But is the scientist actually placed inside the society? Or is there a disconnect between the scientist and society? The scientist is somewhere far away, in the lab or amidst the books or the research papers. So many a times it may happen that the scientist is not very tuned into what the current problems of society are. It might happen. And we have gone through, Dr. Foster's and Frankenstein, that was written at the age of 19 years, what monsters we create, because we are so excited by our own achievements that we forget that we are doing science for human beings. We are not doing science for the thrill of finding out new things for ourselves, though that is what pushes the boundaries of knowledge. And people who are engaged in science of thought do that all the time. And that's what has brought the fire from the paradise. That's what Prometheus did for us. So that's a good thing. But then innovation for innovation's sake, or innovation for the welfare of mankind? What is it that we are looking for? So if innovation has to be for the good of mankind, then we have to keep a check. We have to control. We have to be conscientious of what each life cycle of AI is involved in. And that we can do only by laying down the do's and don'ts. We can only lay down the penalty clauses. That means we are making a regulatory framework. And why guardrails are to be embedded in AI solutions? Just what I said a little before. You scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And that's not me, that's from Jurassic Park. That's a dialogue by Ian Malcolm. So the question is not what you can, but what you should. And, it takes a lot of anchorage into values and ethics and a lifelong pursuit of human well-being to understand what is for the welfare of mankind. It's so easy to get waylaid. And ethics are important because we need to improve upon our life. I don't know, somehow what was this side has just disappeared. This is technology. And ethics has preoccupied us since the time of Socrates and Aristotle. And we know justice, courage, temperance are all, our ethical virtues that we aspire to follow. The advantages, of course, we all know what are, like better decision making, higher speed, eliminates the possibility of prejudice and subjectivity. I mean, these are the reasons why AI is pushed forward in the first place. Working night and day, human beings cannot work 24/7. Work in risky scenarios like cleaning a toxic spillage. Working as public utility, regulating traffic, facial recognition, establishing identity through unique attributes like biometrics and iris. So here is the problem. AI is so good. AI can do things that you and I can't. And therefore, there is every reason to invest in AI. That's what the world says. AI can bring us the age of abundance. And the age of abundance means that human beings don't need to work. What a dream. What a dream they show us. You don't need to work. You can just have pleasure. We'll be a hedonistic society, sleeping, making merry, eating, and dreaming. I don't know if that is desirable. I'm not saying that. These are the disadvantages, the absence of empathy and compassion. And they say that maybe time will address these issues. AI will also be compassionate. AI will also have human agency. AI will be just like our what should I say, partners, co-inhabitants, and we might become like their pets. And mind you, this is the narrow age of AI. We are in the very nascent stage of development. You can read the disadvantages. AI mimics the human intelligence. We all know that. It identifies the fastest way to travel to a destination. It tries to simplify our lives. And remember your childhood, your parents were always encouraging you to take on challenges, not to go the easy road, to take the road less traveled. That's what we were brought up on, to be ready to face challenges, not to be easy all the time, no? Take the easy route, but that is what AI tells us. Ease of doing business and ease of living. Those are the mantras. And why not? Because life is becoming so complicated anyways. So we are trying to simplify it with AI. Are we simplifying it? This is how the deep neural network works. And, we are inspired by our own mind, by our own brains working. And we are trying to improve upon it and improve it to such an extent that the machine is going to come back and control us. So we want to delegate our decision-making power to the machine to be able to take control over our decisions. So AI is the new technological inflection point. Of course, we have to reorient our work and life to maximize the benefits it offers and determine our position on the global AI stage. We are prioritizing AI in our country, and we are trying to make the best use. We are encouraging AI model building and tool designing. We are tapping the power of AI to accelerate the pace of research in fields like clinical trials, personalized medicines, and other fields of research. So we know that AI is not any one field of knowledge. It can accelerate all the fields of knowledge, all the fields of human activity. So we are also in the process of setting standards for AI tool designing. And of course, as I said, AI is transnational. So you can't be setting standards in isolation because the world is one. And though AI innovation is taking place in North America, Silicon Valley, the use cases are all over the world. So we have to set standards globally. We have to make regulation globally. Of course, it's easier said than done. The healthcare sector in India, of course, equity and access, as I told you earlier, is our biggest hurdle. And we started with a national health mission in 2005. And through that, we have tried to address all the problems of especially maternity health and child health, which have been, real cases and problems for us. Because child mortality and infant mortality and maternal mortality, these are the three very key indicators for development. Oh, thank you so much for reminding me. So they say that AI reduces time and enhances quality. So initial screening, manual vital signs were taken in the traditional method. And in the AI-enhanced approach, smart wearable and chatbots are being used. And it reduces waiting time by 40%, enables 24/7 monitoring. But then we all know what happened when an Australian used the chatbot for suggesting to him that he could take sodium bromide instead of salt to reduce his salt intake. And what happened then? So people are invariably talking and chatting to their chatbots and discussing their health parameters and health problems. And they are not at all aware of the danger that they are, walking into. So clinical decision-making, follow-up care, emergency detection, cost of diagnosis, treatment planning, all these are being done now in a modern way by using AI-backed technology. And yes, there are key benefits, but there are also real dangers.
Excuse me, I apologize. You have to go to conclusions.
Okay, I'll go to the conclusion. And all this you can read. So, what is the effort that is being made by India? And we are also in sync with what's happening on the international stage. UNESCO recommendations on ethical aspects of AI, we have adopted and we are including it in all our sectors. So instead of making a comprehensive AI legislation, India has worked on sectoral approach. So all the sectors, the telecom operators are regulated. Then you have the ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, and the Central Drug Research Organization. So all of them are working, and the Consumer Affairs Ministry, they all are working in their respective fields to tame and regulate AI in their respective manner. Okay, and of course, we have also been inspired by the EU AI Act, and we have made the Digital Personal Data Protection Act very recently, and the rules have been notified. And there is a huge penalty for the defaulters for data leakage and data spillage. These are the AI governance guidelines that we have issued very recently, and I have given you the link. You can go there and see. And of course, we all follow the same philosophy. We talk about safety, inclusivity, and we want to move towards Viksit Bharat at the rate 2047. We hope to become a developed country by 2047 by addressing the current problems through leveraging emerging technologies. These are the challenges before the regulators. We have to make soft laws because AI is evolving so fast, but the right to privacy is very sacrosanct. And we have a Justice K.S. Puttaswamy judgment in India, which is absolutely one of the historical landmarks. And it says that right to privacy is a fundamental right of every citizen. So he moves the stakes up very high and says that right to privacy has to be respected by any AI solution that is being created. These are the pathways to beneficial initiatives. These are different sectors which are making the guidelines and the guardrails. The National Health Authority, the federated architecture is being used because health is a state subject in our constitution. We have a central list, state list, and concurrent list. So the health is happening at the municipal level and the local level, so that it is there that the regulatory frameworks have to be evolved. India has a Khushi Baby AI solution that is very successful. It tracks the vaccination, so there can be no faltering, and the middle persons and the nurses, and they cannot play foul by missing it out. It's being tracked by technology, and it is linked to the operators and to the administrators, so they know in real time that vaccination has happened. The regulator's dilemma is you have to be pro-innovation. So innovation is being said to be pitted against regulation. So innovation versus regulation, though it should not be like that, Regulation has to promote innovation. And unless there is positive regulation, innovation can go haywire. We know that. And this is the data protection, how the consent framework has been evolved.
Excuse me.
Yeah?
Time is over.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And there's so much more to say. Okay. So I spoke about cyber threat. We all have studied, and there were some case studies I wanted to discuss, and it was one of them was the National Health Services in UK, which was cyber attacked, and what happened then, we all know that. And in US, the NH predict algorithm was used to deny insurance coverage to old people. So AI algorithms can also be hidden. They may have a hidden agenda, though on the surface of it, it will be said that technology is neutral and technology is serving you, but actually it may be made and designed in a way that discriminates. And you'll never know. Like Amazon used a product to not allow women to apply to certain positions. And it was never known because a candidate who doesn't get a job never sues the company. So this would never have come to light. So data quality, then I had AI risks. I'll just run through it. But I must let you see all my slides. I'm not reading. yeah, the pathway is secure, trustworthy, and ethical AI. All of us agree to that. Setting global benchmarks, that's the way forward. Human agency, dignity, sustainability, equity, access, transparency, autonomy of human beings. These are non-negotiables, according to me, if you want to use AI. So the culture of innovation and scientific temper. And I want to finish by saying AI education is very important. The person on the road should understand what AI is going to do to her or his life. Thank you so much.
Vidashi. Thanks a lot for your fantastic presentation. Thanks a lot. But we haven't time. We haven't time more because we have another speakers. Sorry. Я, наверное, сразу объявляю следующий. So I'll announce the next speaker. This is Pavlov Chevdar-Savovich. He is the head of the Department of Therapy at the Institute of Professional Education Deputy. In this Sklifosovsky, he is the Doctor of Medical Sciences. Thank you very much. I just want to thank Alexander Ivanovich, our head of the Central Ethical Committee with whom we work. And we also have this our partner from India, and I'm really happy that there are some members of the Central Committee who come to support me. Thank you very much. So, dear colleagues, I'll try to be short because, the previous speaker, he highlighted a number of issues that are very topical and acute for our country, not only for India. And we very actively take part in the development of the international documents that in future will put the vector for the further development. Here we're talking about the global scientific intergovernmental agenda and the discussion of the new technologies, how they impact the development of the humankind. We have a very good abbreviation, which is called PICO, Population Intervention Comparison. This is the abbreviation that I recommend you and use you in your studies that are related to questionnaires. When you study the public opinion, you can follow this. I think it can be very useful. Of course, you have to adapt it to your local requirements. And what was said before by the previous speaker, and I also made some of the references from astrophysics. Here is that was shown in terms of AI, that it reduces to do some of our things, that speeds up some of the studies and brings to some risks that we know. For example, with GPS here, we lose the skills to orientate for orientation with the GPS when we use it. Without this technology, we can no longer do it. There are two models I want to remind you. This is models that are learned on the human text, so that are closer to us and more understandable for us. Here we can somehow to make the certain conclusions in terms of logical structure, what the machines do. And of course, the second model that is more technological, that use reinforced learning, and of course requires the further study. And on bottom you can see the example of the Chinese play Go from zero. So this is the efficient method how to achieve. And on the chart you can see how the technology allows to get the results. The other two examples, the first one, that the first product that was done by AI in 2020 and in 2024, the technology that allows, and already mentioned, to get the analyzers with the certain properties. The first organization where we participate actively from 22 in developing the number of documents of the WHO. There are over 30 countries plus, more than 80 participants in this organization. We represent not only our own academic structures, but we are the member of this organization. because here we have the open discussion club that allow us to communicate with the representatives of different countries on economic development, on political situation, and so on. So, and here are the principles of these organizations, that we have ethically reliable, there's then integrity, openness, and so on. I'm not going to cover all this. Then we need some oversight and the transparency of results. So the main fields where we work, it's biomedical technologies, data of digital healthcare, then IE in the global healthcare, the human rights, the most topical question, and also international tools that should be, harmonized and agreed, and, legal acts for different countries, that we would develop these tools in time. Then the key tools that I used is monitoring, analytical ethics, participations in the norms development, and public discussions. And today, what we see, our interaction, it consists of these components, and this is the chart you can see here. And of course, the main, what you can see here, 6 areas, which you see here on our roadmap for 2026, starting from May 2026. You may see them, and we perform the certain work. So very shortly, this is the first presentation in 2022. Here is the student of the Sechin University. We represent our Central Committee of Ethics, Russian National Ethical Committee, and we discussed this. And this report received a response from 31 countries. They took part in the discussion. Then architecture of healthcare, it's of course one of the very important fields where we work, and which is discussed within the context of the changes of the architecture of healthcare. There is a number of problems that we face, and they should be solved. These are also epidemiological situation, achievements in technologies, and so on. So the goal of reforming of the architecture that we have today, you can find them here on this slide, to have the more practically oriented healthcare structure. You see where we shift from the global programs because there's not enough funding, to the nationally oriented programs, the second that are vertically, and disease-specific programs. From them we go to the integrated approaches based on the primary medical care, with taking account to the preventive medicine. We are going from infectious diseases. And of course, also very important here to have the support on the level of the political structures in the countries who take part in these processes. Here on this slide, you can see the roadmap with the documents that will be discussed today and in future. And another important thing, this is Taipei Declaration. Alexander Leonidovich and I participated in the discussion of this document, and here we mentioned the balance that should be observed between the human rights and the protection of the human interests and participation of the patient in different medical manipulations and processes that are related not only with the scientific but also with the commercial and administrative. It's also a very important thing that help to make relevant all the things that make it relevant to us. And here we see again the deadlines as well. Here you see again this Taipei Declaration, which accompanied by the discussions, and of course again the mechanisms that I already mentioned and that will be in the near future will bring to the development of these documents. What is very important, this is the integrity of the science, which is related to the human rights and civil society. It's important to make the request on the level of the UN, on the WHO. And here you see that all countries that participate in this process should observe their obligations related to the human rights. On this slide, you can see the status of international agreements. I'm not going to dwell upon this because the previous speakers mentioned this already. And this is an example of the declaration or the WH tool for benchmarking ethics oversight that was mentioned by the previous speaker as well. And here I see Alexander Ivanovich joined. Also, there were some comments done to this document. And here you see the main, statements which are related to standardization, protection of the rights of the participants, and work under the emergency situations. So this is the document. That's how it looks like. It was commented already. No need. Then convergence of biological science and editing of the human genome. Quite an important thing where we use AI. And here you see that there are some recommendations on the method based on the next generation sequencing, where we have to give the justification for the beginning of the studies that can using the evidence-based medicine that we use today. Then the bodies, the authorities that are created, also it is related to the ethic oversight. We also discussing this in our central committee. The agent artificial intelligence, you have to understand this attitude where we use AI on different stages, how we interact with those who finance the application of AI. Then development of the drugs, these are scientists. So practically all subjects that do take part in the process of clinical studies when we come to the end of these clinical studies and the results are presented to the user, to the consumer. And of course, there was a emotional speaker before that's so difficult to interact with AI. So these are the drawbacks that were mentioned of the use of AI. And there are some proposals, and you can see them there. These are solutions that can be used in order to solve these problems. And we also have the documents. This is our organization that is actively participates in this process. And of course, the solutions that I presented, they are quite important to find the required solutions. Another international organization where we are the observers and we also work in this organization. I think it's quite important for today. And this is ethic aspects of managing the science and agreement on reform and research and assessment. Here we can speak a lot. We can talk for quite a long time, how we assess the researches that are done today. And we may say that we can assess adequately what is done by different institutions. So here we have to think about AI and how we reform the assessment of the scientific contribution of different organizations and institutions. Yeah. And here, one of the examples, and we know this today, we discuss it very actively. These are publications in the higher rating magazines. Here we see the changes of the understanding, and you see this ecosystem, ecostructure of the open with the open access, that where we can find the publications and research data and software, taking into account the changes that happen today in order to assess their researchers. So this is this work, the aggregation, deduplication, and that is all what we do today. These are the stages of reforming and assessment of the researchers in order to improve the system of assessment of the scientific contribution of different organizations and scholars. And this is strategic plan. This is self-evaluation and research assessment. So I think I'm not going to speak about this. It was mentioned already. Very actively, we now discuss the adoption of all these ethical aspects that allow us to change the research assessment. Here you can see several of our meetings where we actively discuss, and here you may see different people who take part in this process, from administration, teachers, and many other, those who present. And and here the white book that will be published, that have the main statements of this participatory design with the research. This is flexibility and adaptability of the disciplines. And just a couple of words in conclusion of my, I hope I'm following the deadlines, the timelines of. So this is the person, Alexander Ivanovich, who made a great contribution to medical ethics. And this is really very important, that this international experience and the documents that we discuss, they were reflected in the documents that are used in this country, that regulate the processes of conducting the medical clinical studies. You know these laws. This is the list of the laws, and here that is where we have to move forward. This is to work and to use new technologies using the EE and synthetic studies. Ethical regulation of the new biotechnologies, of course, it's a key to the future medicine. It's a key to our future independent development, successful development for the benefit of our patients. Thank you for your attention. I hope I observed the time. Thank you very much. So the next is a nice lady. She is coming to the stage. Valeria Nikolaevna Sokolchik. This is the Academy of Belarus, Belarusian Medical Academy of Sciences.
Коллеги, доклад очень интересный, нам предстоит.
Colleagues, very interesting. Thank you. What we are talking about? What is it for Belarus? I'm not talking about the formal part. What is this? Legislators, soft power, maybe the enlightening educational bodies. What function they have? Who are these people? Who are the members of these, ethic committees? How to educate them? How to train them? And what is the future of the local ethic committees? Just I want to thank Yaroslav Medical University, as rector. Thank you very much. Thank you for invitation. Thank you for very interesting presentations. It's not the end. We will continue tomorrow. But today, I'm closing this session. This is the last presentation for today in this session. In the morning, yes, the presentation was given to you. Okay, I can speak without presentation, but I would like really to show you some of the working tools that we use, that we developed. And if you will be able to put my presentation, that would be very good. I'll appreciate it very much. So I want to start with the ethical committees. We talk a lot about them. And today, with Francis Crowley started with this. We were talking about the essence of the ethical committee. Then half of the participants, they talk about ethical committees. I'm not going to come back to what have been already said and said perfectly about the classical tasks for the activity of the ethical committee. I want to speak about what we have to do today. What are the new roles appear for the ethical committees? What new challenges we face? Let's start with what is open science. I presented Alexander for the university a book which is called Open Science and Bioethics, Mechanism of Bioethics to provide the safety of a human being and security. And the part of this book, not all of this, is devoted to the ethical committees and how they should be restructured and changed. What is open science? I'm not going to give you definitions. I just want to tell that the open science, this is first of all humanization of knowledge, which is related to interdisciplinary studies. Not a single research can be done without humanitarian scientists. That's already humanization, functional humanization. Then democratization of knowledge. This is, call to people, call to specialists, and not only to specialists, to those who are interested in these problems. And of course, it is AI, which we are discussing today. AI, because it's the main tool of open science. Without AI, there is no open science. So, what in the situation of the open science should be done by ethical committees? What is new? And first of all, this is revision with the participation of AI. We cannot go without it. We have to implement it in the high quality to review this research. To do this high quality review of this research, we should have some knowledge. We should be ready for this. Everything I said, this is based on a practical work in ethical committee of different medical establishments, plus in a national ethics committee, and of course on theoretical studies, which are mentioned here, with different international organizations on different aspects, the activity of ethical committees. Classical tasks, and we are ready to deal with them. Not all ethic committees do it okay, starting from the informed consent and so on and so forth. A lot is written about this. There are a lot of recommendations. But what I mentioned, open science. And let's look here. AI. First of all, this link. This is a small chart. We look here, the scheme, that when we assess the research using AI, we have to provide the link of the developer, provider, the head of the, authorities of the organization, healthcare organization, the researcher and the patients. And in the center of this, and we have to oversight it, we have to control it, and in the center should be ethics committee. Then to analyze the research done with the help of AI, we may use different approaches, risky, mixed approaches. But please imagine that ethics committee, these are not scientists, but common people who work, who not always have time to read everything, to go deep into this. So what we propose to them? We propose a scheme, a principle of the AI, how they can apply AI when they assess the research. It's like, there you go, you can take something from here, you can add something depending on how you think it's the best way. Of course, the classical principle of bioethics, don't make harm, autonomy of personality, and the principles of managing the AI, this is safety and manageable control, which also can be divided in different principles. This is, and on top of the scheme, this is the human principle. This is fairness and trust that can protect or preserve the human being, attention to these people, respect, and ability not to use AI, bypass it if necessary. And based on this scheme that was shown before, we made a checklist for the assessment of research, checklist for self-assessment of the research, and to the work of the ethics committee. We get the certificate. For this, what kind of checklist is this? Based on these principles, we can ask questions, very precise questions. Have I included in the informed consent about taking the blood samples or biological samples? Do I have the link with the developers in order to change some things, and so on? I don't think that checklist is a solution for all questions, but for the ethics committee, it's a very useful tool. It's here next to you. I use the checklist, I verify everything, then I have some idea. Then we have to speak about data. It's in continuation of this issue of the studies which are related to AI. And here I propose not to invent a bicycle, but to use the classical approach, starting the acronym. This is the requirement of data which are used in the pharmaceutical industry. Then care, trust, which should be, the storage of data, and then transition of data if necessary. The objective collection of data, because now when we speak about open science, we speak about the visitation of data and the possibility to them for the second time. As our young scholars, they collect the data here, how they do it, not following the rules. Sometimes it happens not very properly. Then how can we speak about transition of this data? What they are going to transit if this were not collected properly? It means there should be a system of control, and then the state system of registration of these databases, data sets, which under the certain conditions can be used. Under certain conditions, again, that should be described as well. And the next issue, this is the work of the ethics committees to attract the society to the research. We did mention it. We were not talking about the community, not just enough. And when we have this research project with the Kazakh, Kyrgyz, and Armenian scientists, we came to the conclusion that crowdsourcing and attraction of people with the ideas, we write a lot. But in medicine, we have to involve community, people who are interested in these problems, in solving these problems. So this is the involvement of the community engagement. Those, for instance, we studied tuberculosis, not TB in terms of medicine, but the dissemination of the knowledge, whether the community is interested in the development of a TB treatment. And then we come to the conclusion that yes, the community is interested. There is a community of patients and physicians. They don't know enough about the studies and research that are done on TB currently in our country. Of course, it may sound a little bit too rigid, but this is the truth from the bottom. And on all slides, I tried to make, the table with the article where we stated the publication. There was the, engagement of the communities in health research. In Eastern Europe, we were talking about the HIV-infected people, and they expressed their opinion how to involve the communities, starting with the problem, then we form the design of the study, and then dissemination of the results. The third block of the problems, we also talk about this today a lot. These are problem of the research ethics. As far as the ethics committee is involved in the risk problems, informed consent, and weighing the risk and benefit, quite often they forget about the, integrity, honesty of the researchers. Again, for the purposes of the ethics committee, we compose this, scheme. How can we combine different principles of the research ethics? Because there are many of them. It was done like a building. The foundation is a classical principle of bioethics. Then the roof, these are the principles of the open science paradigm in which we live. And the supporting columns, these are the pillars. These are the basic principles of the research ethics, to which we subordinate now. And I put them together. Robert Merton, who proposed 4 pillars of the research activity. I tried to put them together with the modern principles. And they correlate a lot. Practically, it's the same. We just use different words. Merton talked about the, we aren't talking about, we forget about the credibility. We're talking about efficiency. Here is a little bit difference. And in conclusion of my talk, I want to say, so apart from these 3 areas of activity, if you're interested, you can read it. You can find these articles, the publications and books. What else shouldn't be forgotten by the members of the ethics committee? Not only expertise, but consultations. I would highlight consultations with the researchers because this is very important today. Much more important, we have to train them, to consult them. Then preparation of recommendations for your own activities and, of course, for the researchers. That can be checklist, SOPs, algorithms, whatever. Recommendations, very simple, short, but they should be developed. And of course, bioethical enlightenment or education. I would say wider that I want too much from these ethics committees, but today there is no other structure. Of course, we can create it, we can develop it, but I don't think we really need it. Better to improve what already exists. Then propagation of the science, promotion of the modern knowledge, involvement of the communities, and thus we can attract attention to ethics and to the science, and expansion of the area of activity beyond the biomedical research. That's for what I'm struggling a lot, because in medicine, whether they were good or bad, they work, but beyond biomedicine, in psychology, not in sociology, not in politology, not in pedagogy, not in bioinformatics, nothing of this exists. I'm talking about Belarus Republic. I hope that's not the same way in Russia, but I think that we have a lot of common problems. And of course, all this can be done only when we improve the qualification of the member of the ethics committees, and if we certify the ethics committees. Certification works very well in Kazakhstan. You can use their experience. You can use the experience because it's very interesting. And then we have to make the improvement of qualification. This is one of the surveys where the members of an ethics committee said what would be more preferable for them. And they say they need the further advanced, training and increase of their qualification, then writing of the publication, and all things that is very important to meet all the time, to exchange experience with the other participants. And for this is the book that I mentioned, the Open Science and Bioethics. This is not something outstanding, but in any way, a lot of modern issues related to the bioethics we try to cover here. And then the 11 fundamental principles of ethical studies. I like this. Ethics, it's not a formality. This is architecture of trust. That's what I want to say. That is very good, motto to finish our day. Thank you, Valeria Nikolaevna. Very good presentation. And I would like to thank Valeria Nikolaevna. That is very important because not everything is very good with non-medical studies and specifically with the, ethics committee. Unfortunately, we don't have the last presentation. The person from South Africa didn't come to us, but just a couple of words. On the previous St. Petersburg International Forum, in one of the venues, the Chinese scholars say very interesting thing. And I remember that AI, it's like, the mold. It can treat or it can kill you. But we have to make our choice. And in conclusion, I want to say, we talk about ethics. We talk about what is inside, what surrounds us, and how we live with it. This is our conscious, this is our interaction. But I want to say that we are now entering to the next stage. These are social humanitarian values in the life of person, in the community, in the society. There are several studies showed that not all people want to live for quite a long time. That is important to take into account. Not all people have values, and what are our values? It's family. This is our work, our career, our hobbies, what we have. They give us not only the wish to live, but also to do something to live for long and happily. So in continuation of our session, I call to you, create and scale the values in your life. That is all. Thank you. Yes, colleagues, good day. It is devoted to the registration procedure that appeared in Russian Federation and then all over the world. Adaptive management of the processes of bringing new medicines to the pharmaceutical markets. So the growth of biomedical technologies, formation of the new global centers of the pharmaceutical centers in BRICS countries bring to the ethical choice that we have to do every time when we meet how soon the drug should be at the patient's bed. And the classical linear model and registration and entering the market, that was done during the dozens of years and classically work for the small molecules, but the stations where we work today, it's quite different from what was created before. Now we see the drugs of the advanced therapy. According to the data of the world analysis, the development of innovative biotechnological drugs come to the maximum and dominating field became the oncology. And now we see that for the patients, every month of the delay is a loss and on the other, the non-checked products bring the risks. By the other words, statistical model of regulation comes into opposition with the existing requirements. We control the risk, but we have to accelerate the access. And the BRICS community show the concept of the adaptive management, adaptive control. This is the adaptive management, then the systemic category, and which unites the decision making by all participants of the process. This is the legal, allow us to make the solutions legally stable. This is the provision of the access, early access to the product, and adaptive design of the clinical study. So these are 4 layers of the So let's look at the regulation models. China moved ahead after reorganization of the national management, and they have a multi-level system of adaptive procedure. Therefore, the priority consideration, and then speed up emergency situation. Then they approved 48 first-in-class innovative drugs. It was the record for the China. 39% of all approvals came through the emergency consideration. And India followed the hybrid trajectory. This is they use the digital platform, and the applications use this platform, and the term for expertise for the review was reduced 3 times. In Anvisa, Brasilia, in recent years, they have 3 parallel reforms. The first, to use the e-document flow, then regulatory lines, and by drugs have renewed the requirements to the comparability of bioanalogous. These reforms reduce the consideration of the application for the clinical study from 180 days to 72 hours. South Africa, in the last years, they also go through the transformation. Because of, first of all, the digitalization was put on the first place, and they entered ICH, this International Council on Harmonization of the drug. So they come on the regulatory maturity, which is comparable to the world jurisdictions. Also, we have to pay attention to the experience of Russian Federation, who provide the speed up. It was started in the 2021, then the legislation was reduced, and the timelines for the consideration of the application also were reduced, and the registration was done very quickly. Then very soon they deployed the different mechanisms, vaccines and drugs. These measures allow Russia for the first time register the vaccine against the new coronavirus infection. And we work closely with Alexander Leonidovich. Shortly, I will say that these mechanisms was put for the regulation in Eurasia. And here we see that unified model of BRICS should put the best elements of the systems and not copy the one. We cannot speak about the acceleration of the effort without. So we have the 3 types of ethical tensions that should be discussed here under the auspice of UNESCO. First, the right of the patient for the quick access to the drug and his right for the for the drug. The second, this is the flexibility of regulated and evidence-based medicine. And the third, ethnocultural diversity, because BRICS countries make the ideal venue to see and use these clinical practices. It's much better than randomized studies. On the other hand, we sets the question about the fair access between the mega cities and provinces of the country. The principles formulated by UNESCO should be inbuilt into the architecture of the organism and not should be put from inside. It means that development of the adaptive mode should be done together with bioethical committees and chair of UNESCO on bioethics. I'm not going to speak about digitalization. We talked of this. So about the potential of development, there are 5 main areas. Fifth, decentralization. This is regular meetings of BRICS countries that we have from 2014. Now they have to become the exchange of the information and then mutual recognition of the solution, then creation of the joint centers of the scientific consultancy, and having these BRICS as the united market for innovations. And the third, harmonization of the electronic electronic file. Then the fourth, this is the common space for the real world evidence. And the fifth is ethical integration on the auspice of UNESCO with the participation of the Russian Committee on Bioethics and other institutes from the BRICS country. We have to agree on the ethical contour of the application of regulatory mechanisms, taking into account the realities of every country, taking into account the peculiarity AI. Not I'm going to speak about it. And in conclusion, the concept of the adaptive management and launching of the products on the market of the BRIC. This is our answer to the changes of the drugs. So we are now in the era, this is a biotechnological system, not just a tablet. And the properties will be seen only when we have the long-term observance. And it can be born in the dialogue, which is done in the platforms like this. Thank you for your attention. Unfortunately, I have to be very, very speedy. I have to be very brief, but I know that we have already go beyond the timelines, but it was very interesting. Thank you very much. Just, you are with us. Can you just say a couple of words to us? Give us the message. Dear colleagues, this is not a kind of, there was a presentation of the book and you saw it, and I want to give these books to our international participants. The ethics of the research in English, we have translated the book, so I want to give it. If it's going to be heavy for you, we can send it to you. It's 600 pages, really. It's rather heavy. We are very thankful to you that we were able to do it, and we wrote this book and we translated it. So I will be only happy to give it to our colleagues, please. This book is for you.
Все, ну это мы потом подарим. Ну, у меня вот больше всего.
Okay, we'll give it later. Thank you very much again. It was very, very interesting. Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure that we have this discussion, you know. And the last presentation showed and demonstrates that ethics is a very practical tool, practical instrument. It can have very important consequences and can be implemented in our solutions and integration of our international cooperation in the drugs. Thank you very much. Thank you for putting us together. So it's important for us that we are all here together. Thank you.